Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, gents. Happy Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
It
Oh,
is-
jeez. I don't even know what day it was.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So just FYI, there's a couple episodes coming out in the future here that we've been recording for. And so that throws me really off because I thought yesterday was Tuesday because that was the first recording we did for the week. So, wow. Okay. All right. Welcome to Tuesday, everyone.
Welcome to Tuesday.
This main topic is going to be kind of around is an effective team crucial to the success? I'm not sure which success we're going to talk about here, but maybe success of your team, your business, a deployment of Power BI. How does this roll out? And maybe we'll talk less about the. I'm thinking and rolling around in my head here. I think a crucial team, an effective team, is always crucial. But maybe how do we bring people in our team up to that effective state? Maybe we talk a little bit about that as well. So that'll be our main topic for today. But before we jump in here, I just want to touch on some things. I've been doing a lot of Spark related things recently, and I can't tell you how much I'm really enjoying the Spark experiences of things. Spark's been amazing. I did a couple. I've done like 3 YouTube videos with multiple PMs from the Spark team, and the stuff that's coming out, the documentation they're producing, how to work better with Spark notebooks. It's really getting robust. I'm really liking this experience. And one thing that I've struggled through here, Tommy, maybe you can speak a little bit to this as well. Copilot inside the notebooks is okay. I think I have found it to be fairly meaningful. It has written some sample functions for me. Here's what I'm prompting with, right? I'm prompting with Python. I'm prompting inside a notebook. And I'm asking it to give me examples of, hey, can you create an example class for me with a function, right? So how do I make the structure? So to me, it's more like proving the structure of the Python to help me build. Hey, I'm writing a function and I want it to do this, and then asking it for a function name and say the input is a string, and then here's what I want. And it kind of does a decent job of giving me the example. One thing I feel like it's not doing as good a job on is being contextually aware of the text I have inside my notebook and highlighting my text and then writing a question around that particular part of text. Like, this function doesn't work, or, hey, I need to rename these columns in this data frame that's being generated here. Can you help me with that? Like, and it feels like it's not quite smart enough to get that there. In lieu of this, I want to move to VS Code because I really like the VS Code Copilot. So this here. Let's stop there. Tommy, what do you think? What's your struggles with Copilot and notebooks?
And I'm going to try not to be too fired up, even though I am pretty fired up this morning. So
double shot espresso.
She left the baseball out, or like this ball, they got ran over. So now we can't play catch, and I'm really upset. So I'm going to
not have one baseball. I see 4 baseballs in the back wall right there. Why don't you play catch?
We're not touching those. This is not Stanley. So I'm not going to let that affect today's going to affect.
Okay. All right.
So the Copilot in the service is great for very generic queries, like kind of you said it. And I call them queries where you're asking a question. Can I give me a data frame, or like very generic, but the power and I think the effectiveness of the Copilots in VS Code or some of the other extensions is that contextual conversation. Like, this is not what I was looking for. I want this type of data type. Can you change that?
Yeah.
And the Copilot in VS Code, Cruiser is phenomenal too.
Okay, I've heard a lot of things about Cruiser.
Dude, I'm telling you, man.
Can you put Cruiser right in VS Code? I've been seeing all these shorts of like, if you want to write an app, if you want to build code, Cruiser is the thing to use.
Oh, Cruiser's the way to go. You get your wallet out and you throw it at it. So,
oh my God. I'm sure they'll be happy to take my money.
Yeah. So, but the difference is both those Copilots, or those assistants, we'll call them, are excellent at 2 things. Understand the context of your code in that page or file, like if it's a Jupyter notebook or it's a Python file or whatever it may be, and having a conversation. So one of the things that they both do, and I really say this for the Copilot and GitHub and the Copilot and Cruiser, is that's not what I wanted. I'm actually looking for 2 columns that do X. It goes, oh, my mistake. The
Interesting.
Copilot in this service treats every query really as separate. It doesn't really look at the previous part of your conversation, your point, the context. And you really do need that, because the expectation with any prompt is you're not going to get it right the first time.
Yes.
And that's where you really need those Copilots to come in. So that's where the service is really falling apart. To your point, Mike, yeah, they have 2 extensions for a fabric called Synapse, which still love.
Okay.
And
I'm a little like, we're in Fabric now, and I'm using the Synapse connector to connect. I mean, I get it.
gosh,
But like, maybe we could rename it a little bit. Let's update it. Like
it's called Synapse for Fabric.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. All right. Well, we tried.
So use the remote one, and this is the other thing I found out. If I use the not on premise, but there's 2 extensions. There's Synapse for Fabric Remote.
Yes.
If you're on VS Code Dev,
Yes.
or there's this just Synapse for Code.
Okay.
That one I don't use. I use that one to install. It actually installs like a Conda service and actually will connect to your
local Python environment.
Right. But then I use the Synapse remote one on my VS Code that's already installed, and it actually works really well.
Okay. So that's one I haven't been able to successfully get mine to work yet on my computer yet. But what I think I want is, I think I want the ability to say, okay, I'm in a notebook in the Fabric service. There's a little button at the top that says open either in VS Code for the web or open in VS Code for desktop. I would be fine with either one as long as either one would work. But what I want to do is I want to bring the notebook to my VS Code experience, get the full richness of Copilot, GitHub Copilot, because I pay for that one, get that one, and then use that. And then I want to run the commands as if they were on the remote server. So like connect back to the Fabric Spark environment and then utilize that to run. So that was something I would like to do. I haven't been able to successfully get it working on my PC, so I'll have to call you out for some help there, Tommy, and get me started on that one.
The best process that I've really done now, especially if I'm trying to go back to lake houses, is I have a sample part of the data. I do the transformations with Copilot on VS Code, like all things I want to do with data frame and Spark. And then when I'm ready to push it back, I basically upload that notebook, because everything I really want to accomplish is accomplished except for pushing it back to a lake house, or pushing it as a Delta table.
Can I? So I love that. I'm gonna have to come back to it. But I want to pivot one additional step away here, and I'm just kind of curious your gentlemen's opinions on this. I don't know, Tommy. Do you don't use a ton of Databricks, but Seth, you use a ton of Databricks wherever you're at. Did you guys see the announcement from Databricks recently? I think it was in the last month about this AI BI dashboard and embedding. Did you see this come out?
I think it was thrown my way. I haven't dug too much into it. Where I got stuck last week was their solution to publish to Power BI.
Oh, with a publish to Power BI
the model
icon that's inside of it's in a unit catalog. It's in unit catalog. You can hit publish to Power BI and it comes into catalog. And yes, is it not working for you? Is that what you're kind of struggling with, or is it just
no? Clunky? I was just not not stuck into the documentation around it.
Oh, you're reading that part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember how I don't know if we talked about this in the podcast, but we said, look, Microsoft has got the corner on the market on like the dashboarding side of things, and like Databricks is like the source of the engineering. And I think we brought up the podcast, but like,
this we were talking about data mesh, right? Like, so
data mesh
business, how the business user interacts with the data. And up to this point, Databricks has been, well, I'm going to
pure
say
engineering
point based on what you're alluding to. Well, more engineering versus
correct.
Microsoft having that front end experience that the business is very well used to and engaged with.
Okay, so I feel there's a shift or some competition coming to market here with this AI BI dashboard thing. So one thing I'll note here, community, is check it out. Sorry, I just read the chat. Donald Parrish, you're saying we're saying VS Code, not BS Code. VS Code is what I write every day, all day long. VS Code is what I use to write with notebooks. My bad. I'm going to put an article in here. I think I see a Databricks AI BI dashboard being embedded into a SharePoint page with from the Databricks blog. So what I think is happening here is Databricks is now allowing users to be able to create a report, a dashboard, visuals on a page, and they're iframing it, and they're letting you drop the iframe into other applications now.
It seems familiar.
Seems really well. I mean, other tools do this too. This is not like a wow. Look how much this is creative. Databricks caught on to what Power BI is doing here. But if I'm thinking about the volumes of data that are embedded into Databricks or things that Databricks has, right? Sure. It does make sense for them to kind of put a little bit of a UI or a front-facing visual side of things on top of things. I don't know if it's going to be thoroughly competitive with Power BI. Not sure. We'll have to do some testing and see what happens here. But this is a very interesting direction shift to me because I think up until this point, Databricks has been really focused on data engineering, pipelines, Spark, the whole experience around that side of things. And now we're starting to see like the SQL side getting a lot more love in Databricks, and now we're starting to see dashboards appear in different places. And I've already had requests from customers to say, hey, what would it be like if we could embed this next to my Power BI reports and all in one app? What does that look like? So stay tuned. Maybe some news coming out here pretty soon. We're doing some heavy investigations on this, but I think this is something to take note of for those of you who are Databricks customers or who are looking at things. There may be something here with this Databricks BI embedding dashboard things that might be of some use to you. Just want to point that out. But I feel like there's been a shift in market, a shift in some messaging here that I think is worthy to take note of. Just thought I would throw it out there. Okay. Enough of the news and article things. I think we're pretty good there. Any other thoughts or things, Tommy, for kind of a beat from the street here, or any of the news items you thought were relevant?
I think that's pretty good. I do feel we'll revisit the Databricks as that gets a little more polished in the future.
Yeah, I sorry, there's so many random thoughts in my head. There's a lot, that's interesting to me. Tommy, your thing about using different AIs inside VS Code is very interesting to me. Like the fact that I can just pull in AI Cursor or ChatGPT. I did have a funny moment. I was driving the car with the family, and we were writing a birthday card for somebody, and I needed a little bit of help getting like, what's the wording? What should I put in the card? So I kept asking. I started with Siri. I said, "Hey Siri, can you?" Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Now she's going to answer me. She's listening. So I said, "Hey, computer, like, give me a joke or something to say in this card," and it just basically made a card with the number of the birth person's age in my phone. I'm like, this is totally useless. Like they're not even on the planet at this point. So I had to open up Chat GPT, and I was having a full like voice text conversation with it, and I was shocked. I was like, okay, I knew you could type to it, but I wasn't playing with the whole voice to AI thing back and forth. I would ask it a prompt, it would come back with a response and voice it back to me, and then I would say, no, that's not what I wanted. Can you change it a little bit? Can you add this to it? No, that joke was corny. Do another one. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll make another joke here. That was too much like a dad joke. Make it a bit more serious. Like like it was crazy how easy it was to kind of talk with the thing, and I was like, I did not understand this. Like I was floored when I saw this.
Okay, you made me think of two quick things, and then we'll jump on. So that voice feature, you need to go to your custom instructions in ChatGPT and tell it, when I'm speaking voice, I want you to say and you actually write that until I'm ready. When I'm done, I'm going to say the word done. So what happens is you can have this.
Tommy, you know all the dude. Your prompt level is like your next level on prompting.
What happens in this is you have this conversation like, listen, ChatGPT, I was thinking about doing this for a project. You're and then you can go off this long spiel and you say done. It goes and immediately starts talking back, and all of a sudden you're like, this is better than talking on a podcast. So
this is what you do in your
spare time,
in your little office. All day long.
To the next part. My wife came down and I was working late.
Is the voice on the AI a woman's voice? This is where I see this go.
No, that's not. That's not that. It's not that. Not that.
I was like, "What are you? Please call me, ChatGPT. Please call me Master Tommy, please." Hello, Master Tommy.
Yeah, you could do that too. But she's like, "What are you working on?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm working on a few integrations with AI and a semantic model." She's like, "No, really, what are you doing?" I'm like, "You want me to explain everything?" She's like, "Yes." I was like, "All right." I have a local model. It's called Old Llama, but there's actually two different kinds. One's from Meta, the other's from Microsoft. It's called Phi. I have both those models connected to a semantic model, and I'm trying to actually see if they can structure it better. And she's looking at me going, "Never mind."
Just goes back upstairs. The words we use, even just talking with just the words we use anymore. I mean, if you were someone who didn't understand like Databricks, Spark, runtime engine, semantic model, just the DAX. Words we use, DAX, like people are like, who are you talking about? Like, what is going on here? And it's funny because my kids are now picking up on some of the technical words that I'm using and stuff, and it's just becoming more common language at our house. And so they'll talk to their friends like, what does your dad do? Oh, he works on DAX and semantic models. And their kids are like, what is that? He sits in the basement all day and works on AI. And everyone's like, what does he do? What? Yeah. So it's funny when the language, the words we use. I was just doing an interview with some of the PM team, and they were talking about I think it was gluten, and it was
This is the one that sparked
this is
me. Yeah.
this is the one that was like, it's an open source project of like making the Spark engine run faster. It was, and this is the one. Yeah, there's just all these terms. I'm like, they're using terms on vector, gluten, all these different things. The DAG that's in there, like there are all these terms. You're like, what in the world are we talking about? Anyways, very interesting things. It's a weird world we live in these days. And I think it's fun from a data perspective. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and things I think are moving really fast at this point, which has been exciting.
At this point, maybe we got a couple years actually of like it calming down.
Do you think it will calm down for a bit and then it will ramp up again?
No, I'm saying I think we got that.
Oh, we're done.
Fabric showed up, and now it's just many more years of drinking from a fire hose.
Well, if we could get some of the features out of preview, that would make me very happy. That's kind of the only thing I'm working on right now. Let's get a couple more things. Spanish Q&A, please. Let's land that feature. That's good. It's good enough. Let's just land it.
It's good enough.
In test for 3 years. Let's go. All right. Enough of that. Let's jump into our main topic today. So just jump into the main topic. Thanks for humoring me for the random items we talked about in the beginning here. That was fun. All right, let's talk about jump into our topic. Tommy, give us some frame here. Let's talk about how do we evaluate our team? How do we make our team more effective? Is an effective team crucial to our success of our business or department, what we're doing? And how do we maybe improve that? What techniques or things can we utilize to help make that team become more effective?
No, absolutely, Mike. And this is one of the things I really do love about our conversations, because we just started off with AI and all the technical things in Databricks, but I think all of us are very acutely aware that it takes more than one person. It takes more than one very good skill set or technology to bring something to be. And I think we'll even define today what success actually means, to your point earlier. So
I think that would be good.
There's a lot of moving parts in what we do. And yeah, some of us are consultants, but we've also worked in a team. And anytime we go into new projects, Seth is in the depth of this, of picking his team and making sure they're all working
in really, the depth. True. In the depths.
That's the depths. Exciting.
Okay, you're gonna have to. This is like, let's not put Seth in the depth of this. Let's just let
ChatGPT understands me. Okay,
all right. She understands me.
Right, right. In the thick of it. So
you didn't say done.
Yeah, he's trying. Tommy, that actually is a whole fictitious story. Tommy actually made that whole thing up just so that he could say done to us, and he could have more time to talk and tell us when he's done. I'm done now.
Think about what he's trying to say. Yeah. But I mean, truly, like what the inner workings of a team, both from culture, the skill sets, the expectations, can really make or break a central BI team or anyone working in technology, and especially in the data space. So I think some of the conversations that we want to have today and really want to dive into is, what is a BI team? What makes that successful? And let's actually define the success of a BI team. Is that just the individuals feeling that their success? Is that the projects that were based on them? What does a BI team really look like in terms of the inner workings, both from, I think, technical and the soft skills? And how do we actually, if you were to take a year from now with a single team, how do we actually gauge that's been successful?
And there's a lot of things here to unpack. All right. I'm going to lean on some of the books I've been reading a little bit in some of this topic, and I'd love to hear. I'm just going to kind of throw out some things. A lot of my view, probably around this topic, will come from a book I just recently read, which was Atomic Habits. If you haven't read Atomic Habits, highly recommend it. Very well done. I didn't read it. I went through the whole audiobook like twice now, but really enjoying the lessons that I'm learning from that book. And then the other one I'm working through right now. I'm not done, so I got to be very clear. My wife tells me, you can't recommend books you haven't finished. I'm like, well, I got about like a third of the way through. I feel like I kind of know the gist of what's going on. Like, it's helping me already. Like,
amazing.
If it helps me for the first 30%, why wouldn't it help me for the last 60%? I don't know. Like, she's like, you can't do that. So I have to be very clear, explicitly calling out here. I've only read the first bit of the book, but I'm also reading Scaling People as well. And I feel like I didn't make the connection when you brought up the topic, Tommy, in the notes here. But I feel like part of this is around dealing with scaling people and scaling leaders in your company. And how do you really work with them to like give them the skills to succeed where you need them to be for the next level? Are my thoughts there. Seth, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I like what's being said so far. How we take it in different directions will be interesting. I think where I land first is when I look at the crucial aspects of any person or team, right? Like what are the things that define success, right? Like
Hmm.
that people would look at and say, "Yep, these are the things that these are the criteria by which I measure things." And I think where I land first is because having those factors gives me kind of the guideposts, at least mentally, to walk through, like how would I improve people, what things do I have to improve upon, like how do I skill people up, or am I doing, is this team operating the way we would want it to. And like the first thing I guess I see is, are you or is the team delivering value to the business, right? And we talk a lot about that in as it relates to like revenue or operational efficiencies. And that's predominantly where I think business intelligence teams can make a pretty significant impact in organizations. And having that as kind of the guidepost, I think also a couple factors that play into that are folks that are taking ownership of thing like projects from start to finish, as well as following processes that are designed to help the team versus like doing things in a silo or on their own. I'll stop there.
I like those siloed teams. At some level, sometimes you're going to have. I mean, I feel like I've observed like there were times when teams will just be they're not given enough support. There's not enough new users to get everything done. Like there's going to be times where I think there's like portions of companies that are going to have to just figure things out in a small team and just get things done. Integrating that across the business, I think, is a really a hard thing to do. And I think maybe if we talk about the things that are effective here, I think back to a comment that was made in one of Rob Colley's books. He's just talking about if we took all the code, if we worked an Excel sheet and there's some code you're writing or a VBA macro or some code to build an application, if you told someone just to type out the code as is, it would take you a week or two, a month, right? Depending on how much code you're writing. It's just fine. But when you put people together on a project and the project has to be communicated across different teams and across to other people, that project takes months to complete because there's so much communication happening across those different teams. And what do you need? And what do you need? And like, so the code, the output is minimal. The amount of the product that you end up with is not that big a deal, but the journey to get there, the levels, the amount of communication that has to occur in order to bring you back to that that answer is immense. And so I think one of the things I would say around one of the things that are critical to your team being successful is good communication skills from your team internally, but also good communication skills to your team to other teams across the business. How to voice concerns, how to voice when you need more help from another team because they're not delivering something. Because there's sometimes if you're working in one team in a silo, you have control. You can do what you got to do, and the reliance is on your shoulders. But what happens when you're trying to get data from that other team that's not helping? The data's unclean. They said it was. It delays things, right? So I think there's this idea of like being able to communicate those challenges up to leadership and across those other teams in a way that helps everyone win. I really like your point also there, Seth, is like at the end of the day, the business can deliver. If you can deliver as a business for the business to get the answers they need, that's where the value comes from.
I would say that's half the story there, because when
Okay.
we actually think about this, I'll say that the high level definition of how would you actually define success here, it can't just be that we're finishing and exceeding projects on time or before time, because you're dealing with people. So there's really three aspects of a successful team from a longevity point of view. It's going to be the value the individual feels, the value the team feels as a whole, and the value they're bringing to the business, right? You can deliver things on time, but have complete burnout on that team, or one person is carrying the load, but the project was done. So when you're dealing with a team, you're really dealing with those three areas of expectations. And I'll go to the simple definition. If you're asked, my definition of success is meeting or exceeding expectations. A successful team has to really manage and carefully manage those three: the individuals, the team as a whole, and the business's expectations of what they're meant to succeed. Because again, you do one project, one person carries the load. The team was successful because they finished the project, and the business was successful because they gave the value. But how long can that team actually last? So if you're the manager or if you're just part of that team, the three aspects again are the individual's value or feeling that value. Do they feel burnout? Do they feel like they're part of the team? Whatever their expectations are, is the team feeling that they're delivering the right value? And again, ultimately, does that actually provide value to the business?
Yeah, I think those are really good points because, and it leads to what I kind of term the team dynamics, right? Um, and lots to cover in there, but as somebody who manages people, like that is extremely important because if you have you have different types of personalities, but you also have different types of skill sets. And to your point, Tommy, like if a team has, you know, an overachiever or a high achieving individual, right, and the rest of the team, or you have a couple of those and you have some support people as well, and or additional ones that like still have growth opportunities, what ends up happening is if other members of the team aren't carrying your weight, like you were describing, the burden falls on those who are achieving more or owning, like feel responsible for the delivery of things. And that will cascade all the way up to people who are like the team leaders or the managers, right? Like the failings of individuals to achieve something is going to put load on somebody else. And like, so there's that dynamic, but also at the same time, unrealistic expectations of the business, right, can also have a detrimental effect on the team dynamic as far as like um they're finding value in the work that they're doing, to your point, because you burn out, right? So there has to be an ebb and flow also of like how fast you can burn a team, and then when do you need to dial it back a little bit and kind of relax or push back on delivering certain things because they need to catch their breath a little bit.
I like your points there. I was kind of, when you made your comment, Tommy, around meet or exceed expectations as far as the team goes, I resonated with that one. One of the thoughts that came into my mind is, do we even have a clear definition of what the expectations are from the business at times? And I think sometimes I feel like we walk into situations where the business expects too much, doesn't really understand what to expect, or underestimates the value. Like, I think that in this data engineering and getting things prepped for models and getting things out the door in Power BI reports, I think there's an underestimation of how much effort it takes to really do that shaping of data to get it out the door clean, ready to go for semantic models. So I think sometimes the business comes in with expectations that are a bit out of proportion. And also, I would argue, when you bring me a brand new data source, yes, I can kind of know how long it would take me to absorb that new data source. But there are teams that, if you've done something for the first time, it's very difficult to estimate something for the first time. You just acquired a company. There's this new company coming in. You're gonna have to rip out Tableau and put in something Power BI related. Like, have you done that before? No. Can you make a plan? Yes, you can. But I think there's gonna be just more error in your solution just because you haven't done it before. So I really like this expectation setting. I think this is very important to helping your team be successful, not necessarily the team being effective. And now it's just a matter of, what does success look like? What does that definition of done mean?
Yeah. And I think unique for us too, in our space, at least if you're just dealing in the Power BI world, it's pretty hard from the collaboration side too, because I think a lot of us are used to working streamline, where I do the semantic model, I do the DAX, I do the report building. I've been on teams where it was all split, where someone was in charge of the marketing data, someone was in charge of sales data, someone was in charge of the operations and finance data. And you had it was the same team, but it was very siloed. We had times where we were trying to split things up, and it's very difficult for us in our world to do like front end, back end type of development, because that doesn't really exist. So when you're, Seth's point, when you're trying to like lighten the load for one person, well, again, the skill set are not as established as maybe a normal development team, or we're working on a like we're in marketing and we're working on promotional material, where the collaboration becomes a lot easier because the tools allow it. Our tools are still not really set up for collaboration in a very streamlined approach.
I want to entertain John Kursky's comment in the thread here on the chat thread. John's talking about. I really like that. I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this. Unpacking this idea here. John's talking about basically reading some books, how to lead. One of the books he found was Leading Geeks, which is interesting. I'll put that on my area. But he says it helps them focus on 4 main key areas for their success. And then he talks about as BI practitioners, learn data ops, because if you learn data ops as a team, you focus more on the process to get good things out the door, and you're less reliant on the heroes, those one high achiever or couple high achiever individuals, to get things done and push it out, because you have a process that helps you catch issues earlier. Or that's how I'm kind of interpreting that comment there. What are your guys' thoughts on this? I like this comment.
I mean, I agree. Having good processes is essential for having an effective team, right?
Yeah.
Because there are things that everyone on the team needs to do to work together really well and efficiently. Yeah. I don't like, without that, are you putting undue burden on folks for just finding things, or like, yeah, it's harder to develop solutions, I think.
I agree.
But I don't think that removes the challenge between high achievers and those that have opportunities to grow.
That's probably true.
I would completely agree with that. Without saying too much more, yeah, I mean, you're still dealing with, again, we're in an industry where we don't have these very set, like, I'm a developer 17B, and that actually means something with levels, where you're going to have a lot of situations where if you have a team of 10, more than likely, and this is not always the case, but more than likely, there's 1 or 2 people who know everything about everything. And it's very easy to task most of the things on them because they do it all. So it's like, one, I think,
give Tommy all the hard stuff. Anything with an API or some large language, that's Tommy's job. Tommy, figure it out.
A lot of red eye nights. But truly though, too, like, I think a difficult part, even with the data ops, is you got to gauge the skill set, but I think you need to consistently do that, because again, this is not like building a bridge. And what I mean by that is the methodology of building a bridge does not rapidly change every year, but our technology and our skills do. So how am I gauging consistently my team and where people are strong as the technology is also always changing?
That's interesting you say that, Tommy. I was a mechanical engineer in a previous life, and I built precast concrete structures, okay. Right? So not bridges per se, but I was building out like parking structures. You know, those big warehouses, like the Amazon shipping warehouse, has those big concrete walls. I was helping design those, putting the windows in the right spot. There's all kinds of, like, steel you put inside this big concrete panel they make in a shipyard or a concrete yard.
Off, or
then they ship. No. Oh no, you're actually 100% right. The science of those things is like very well known. Like, hey, if you're going to have rebar in this kind of pillar, it's going to hold this kind of load. You need to have this number of loops in this section. The thickness is this. It's like a science. Mm-hmm. That was one of the reasons why I was like, this was interesting. I enjoyed learning it and doing the work there, but I moved on because I was like, well, at the end of the day, like, there's nothing creative here. There's nothing new. Like, I liked being part of the creative side of things, like creating something from nothing or being innovative and designing. So I think I really fell into a good position when I went into like research and development, because, okay, we have the laws of physics we have to obey, but we have to build this product under cost this certain way. That's when I really think I started finding my calling, because I liked creating things. And to your point, the precast concrete structure thing, it's basically a mathematical formula now, and there was not a lot of net new things. You're like, wow, they've just made a brand new concrete mix, and it changes everything you've ever done. It's not like that revolutionary. It's very known and consistent.
And for us, that happens every month.
Yeah, true. Who keeps moving the cheese?
I think also what the value of process in teams, right? If we're talking about the effectiveness and teams that are successful versus not, is is they have good processes, because you're creating consistent outcomes that are high quality, and that's what processes do, right?
Mm,
They're
mm.
also, I
Yeah.
think, the guideposts for or by which expectations can be set, right? If
Yep.
I've always, as the more I've managed like teams and larger teams, right? It is I'm a firm believer, like, I can't, no matter how many things I say, if I haven't written down somewhere, or I don't have a clear process that somebody can reference all the time when they're doing their job, because we're not infinite sources of, like, oh, I'm going to remember everything all the time, right? So do I have that somewhere where somebody can reference, like, oh man, yeah, this is the area of business I'm plugging into. Here's what I like. I know we have a checklist for that, right? Or, oh, I know I need to go do this thing, right?
Mhm.
And that way, I'm setting the team up for success for themselves to be able to, like, create a quality outcome, because they can follow this repeated pattern that works successfully.
Let me ask you guys two questions, kind of a little based off, I think, just putting things in writing, and this little off just process for two people who kind of really are running full-fledged teams right now, outside of compensation, because I don't even want to touch that because that's still part of it. But I remember the times I was happiest on a team. I think there were the two areas. I'd be willing to work late hours if I felt that there's value in what I was doing, or I was growing my skill set, where the team or my manager or the group I was with, we were all growing in something like, hey, now I know how to do X. And but also too, on the other side of the coin, I wanted that kind of balance too, where I did feel resentment at times when I might have been doing a bulk of the work. To your point, how important over the long run is that to juggle? Where for the whole team as a whole, you have to put into perspective both how much hours and the workload, but also the value that they're getting out of that. Is that a big juggle from a team on a consistent basis, or is that something that's more reviewed on maybe like a quarterly basis?
Daily. Well, not like,
Yeah,
and I'm kind of joking, but not really. But those two points, like, think about what drives you. Those two
yeah,
things. If
Mhm.
you understand the levels of effort that you're putting in, you understand the outcomes of what that's doing for the business, and or sub in, hey, while I'm on the job, I'm also growing and learning new things. I think those are two of the key factors of anybody being satisfied with what they're doing, right? I want to know that what I'm doing is making a difference, right? And or I want to feel like I'm learning and growing as an individual. Without those two things, I think, yeah, you quickly fall into lands where people are just showing up for a paycheck, right? Or it's
Mm.
the next thing on the bullet list to do, and this is somebody's telling me I have to get this stuff out the door. So I think, as a leader, you absolutely need to draw those lines for your individual, like your folks, and that's where organizational standards like OGSMs or
mhm,
OKRs are extremely helpful, right? Because as long as the visibility traces all the
voice
way
of
up to,
cues.
like, hey, I know that my efforts are helping us solve this problem, or, and wherever possible, like, I think drawing in, the, hey, when we do this, we're going to carve off like a week's worth of time every month that somebody does, like, has to do this manual process. Like, what that's going to do for that person is they can now,
Mm. Mhm.
dedicate a bunch more time on, areas over here, or like the efforts that we build is going to drive revenue, and the commercial team thinks it's going to, come in by this much, whatever, and then you can retro and look at, like, what are the impacts that project or work has done for the organization. So I think that's, especially in the technology realms, something that is skipped over too often by business teams, is not relaying that information backwards and saying, hey, like, rather than give, the return of, hey, did you guys know that, like, we just signed this, like, major deal because of the work you guys did, congratulations, right? We couldn't have done
Mm.
it without all of your hard work.
That's a really good point.
So
I like
huge
tying your work back
points,
to
Zoe.
successes. I think it's really important. I mean, as I've been learning how to lead, again, this is why I don't know if we've talked about this podcast before, but I think I've mentioned it before. I've had someone kind of mentoring me and kind of gave me the phrase, walk to the end, or walk as far as you can see, and then you get there, you can see further. It was a very interesting statement to me, but one of these things that I'm working on a lot right now, Seth, is around this. It's like, how do you find people that, and what motivates them? How do you, like, publicly encouraging them as a team? Like, hey, this was a good win. We had some challenge here. Someone really stepped to the plate and just knocked it out of the park. I think it's really important that us as leaders, you think about what you like when you had good leaders. What did they do? They sat down, they listened, they took some time to help guide you. They gave you opportunity. There was kind of maybe a direction or a path. You went down with them and say, here's where I'm at right now. And I think to your point, Seth, identifying areas of growth opportunity for your employees and then giving them ample time to like rise to that occasion. I think that's a really healthy thing to do as a leader, trying to bring your team along. So I'm trying to learn more of those things and figure out how can I do those things, because I've realized myself is finite. I can only do so much.
Yeah.
We have to start delegating, and we have to start trusting our team members to do what they've got to do and just crush it. And as long as I think a lot of this is around expectation setting, right? If we understand the expectations on how long we think things should take, or what we need to be having done, or the quality of things that are coming out the door, or the checklists that we need to follow, setting that up front helps everyone come at the end with a better result. I feel like I failed when I asked for something and what I get is not what I wanted. I feel like that's a failure on me to not communicate the right requirements around what I need. And what I have found is, if I continue to focus on better, I guess this is the article from SQL BI to some degree, ask better questions, get better answers. Give better requirements, get better results. Right? I mean, maybe to some effect there too.
Yeah. I think one of the other areas that's probably just something that I will never solve, but is one of the I think keys to having a successful team is create and one that delivers, and one that is super effective, is creating an environment where people understand that our efforts have positive or negative impacts. However, however, there's this ecosystem or this environment of mistakes happen. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to accomplish something together. And the challenge in there is, I think, a lot that it's very difficult to get individuals on teams to be transparent all the time, in terms of like the successes, the failures, the struggles, the challenges that they're having. Because what a lot of the times happens, and it's like one of the things I lead with new people on the team all the time, is like, what is the definition of failure, right? What is their definition? Because my definition of failure of a project or something at work revolves around being put in a position that I can't make a decision that is without severe impacts. Meaning, hey, you were supposed to do this project, but you waited until the last hour of when you're supposed to deliver it to me to tell me that you ran into a problem and it's going to require 3 more weeks, right? I can't do anything with that. Right.
Yeah.
So the failure is, you recognize that a week ago and we didn't have the conversation then, so that like communications could start to happen. Are there ripple effects in business? Absolutely. Right. Like, there's not an impact, but the failure was in communicating or being vulnerable enough to believe that your leader or your teammate like would understand that, hey, you screwed up. Hey, there's a problem. Hey, like, I'm stuck. Right. And rather than having an uncomfortable conversation in the moment that something could be like handled or dealt with, you're pushing it down the road to an inevitable outcome, which is you haven't delivered, right? And you needed to, but now nothing can be done about it, or you can't course correct as easily without bigger impacts. And to me, like, saying that is the failure is, we're all going to screw up, right? Like, but if we know that there's a problem, actions can be taken to like try to remediate it, or at least communicate to the business that there's an impact that's incoming, so that we can absorb it, versus an expectation, right,
Mhm.
that something's going to happen, whether that's in our own team or in a wider audience, that all of a sudden it's like, wow, everybody's got to shift their perspective, and now we're understanding that there's a significant delay, and we didn't know about it till when we were supposed to produce said thing, right? And I think that alone is probably one of, like, opening that up and stretching it is, or driving for it, at least in the team itself and with leaders, is one of the key things that I still haven't found the success for, because I think many people come into or have teams where that level of transparency is not something that is rewarded.
Mm. Mhm.
It's actually the reverse, where you are put down for it. And
Yeah.
I think the differentiation between teams that are successful and not, like, that's a huge overriding factor, is can I feel like I'm able to make a mistake and us adjust from it, or do I feel that, like, yeah, I at all costs I have to get this done, and then I'm trying, it's not going to happen, and then I have to deliver the bad news at the end of the day, right? And I think,
Mm.
to me, this kind of scenario, or like layout of that transparency, is something that I strive for, and I think that is extremely important for teams to adopt to be extremely successful.
And I think you're rare with that too, Seth, where yeah, unfortunately that's not that, if you find that person or that team, I mean, you found the unicorn, because you're right. That communication side is hard to find. Mike, I don't know if you had anything on that point, because that made me think as you were having the conversation, one, I think, essential part of a team, and actually as you're talking, made me think about were what I call like minor and major roles, because it's one thing to have the communication with my boss, that top down dialogue and that top down communication, but another essential part of the team is the conversation sideways with my teammates themselves, with my colleagues who are on the same level. And one thing I think is really essential for, I think, dialogue and communication, but also for the team as a whole, is what I call like minor and major roles.
Okay.
And what I'll call like a major role is, you're the database developer. It's kind of more established in the organization. You're known for this, but a minor role is something that is almost unbespoken, or was not necessarily part of your title, but you're just either really good at this, or you're kind of, kind of the project manager around a lot of the projects,
Mhm.
where people can come to you. It's like, hey, do you know this data set, or hey, you worked with this person before, can you help me out here? So I think a really important part, if we're gonna have any team, and as goes exactly with the communication side, is, do I know who to go to for a particular situation? Again, not just my boss, but the person next to my left and the person to my right.
I think as I've been scaling my teams out, it's been a good idea to like have one. Sometimes you become as a leader, everyone comes to you with like, "Hey, I can't figure this out. Hey,
Right.
can I bounce something off you? Hey, can I use your brain for something?" I think to your point here, talking about major and minor roles around the team, like each person on your team. Hey, so and so is really good on Spark and data engineering. If anyone just I think part of the thing I do in stand-ups is try just to make sure everyone knows what everyone else knows. Like to some
Mm,
degree, make sure, hey,
Yeah.
if you're having troubles on this area, it sounds like a problem that so and so has solved before. Can you schedule like an hour with them on your time? Go ask them about their solution. Just talk about the solution together. And then, they can have the conversation. If there's still questions, come back and let's then discuss maybe architecturally or have, engage me and figure out how to, because that way I can delegate those learnings or those lessons across different team members. And I'm finding the more you have those team members on projects for longer, the more they learn, they figure out patterns, it becomes more efficient, it becomes more repeatable. And so I have Python questions, I have notebook questions. This thing doesn't work. I'm getting these weird kind of errors. I know the person on our team to go to ask that question, and so I'm not coming to them like without a very clear question. It's teaching your team, really refine the question, really make sure you know what you don't know, come to them with that clear question, because odds are if you're spending an hour or two or more on a big challenge, someone else might already know the answer in like 5 minutes. It could be just something simple you're missing. The amount of time I've
I
just
like that
spent
a lot.
fixing my own problems just by talking it through with somebody is astounding. I,
No, yeah.
I knew the answer. I just needed to talk it through with somebody. And as I'm going through the talking through, it kind of the solution works itself out.
And
It's
that
interesting.
almost becomes a minor goals too, where I really like that where Seth could come in and say like, hey, I want you to be our feature person in Power BI to know everything about bookmarks. So because I want people to come to you for that. It's not going to be part of their titles, right? It's not going to be
Bookmarks
the
are.
bookmark. Yeah, the bookmarks are right. but that almost becomes something like one, I would feel something like a new goal to achieve where it's not like, hey, you did really well and the business did well. That only gets you so far after so long when you've been working 60 hours.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, as you know, it's like, hey, the business is doing great because of you. Everyone got their bonuses. You're like, great. I haven't slept.
Where's my bonus? Do I get double bonus now? Like,
yeah.
is I
I don't
carrying
know
all
what
this?
to rein my kids in anymore, kind of thing. But there's a point though, too, where all of a sudden you're tasked with like, I want you to be this person. Someone believes in you. And when you have each of these people on the team, well, then one person doesn't feel like they have to do everything.
Yes.
And then two, you're actually having that dialogue. Mike, I love that idea of in those stand-ups, you're almost doing the Remember the Titans. Everyone will spend an hour a day with each person. You will get to know the data developer kind of thing. But to your
but it's cross-pollinating skills because if I want more people to work in pipelines and like I've got to give people time to do that. I mean, this is one of the things about scaling people that I've been learning is, if you're going to ask more people, don't assume you can hire within and be like, hey, this person's good at this thing. They want more responsibility. We push them into leadership or management roles without the opportunity of giving them ample time, like study them up, give them some time. Like, I think there's definitely some real investment. Like, you have to sit one-on-one with them and have some really good, like, here's our goals, here's things I've struggled with, let's read some stuff together, let's build those skills, work on those individuals to really bring in those skills there, because I think that really helps long term. Now you can equip them and then hire them and move them internally. I think the gal who was doing scaling people, she worked at Google, and she worked at when she was it was in a very early stage. She had led a lot of like very large initiatives across the company, grew teams from millions of dollars of revenue to billions of dollars of revenue. I mean, scaling things like that takes a lot of effort. And I think sometimes people think, oh yeah, you just build software and you just make tons of money. Like, that's not how it works. It's less about the technology. It's maybe more about the culture and the people that means so much at that team level.
Yeah. And I think you nailed one of those things too, like regular cadences of one-on-ones, like gives employees direct opportunities to chat with their manager, with their leader, right? And I think helps in the transparency of conversations, right? Like if you're building a personal rapport with individuals on your team, as opposed to just talking to people in the context of the team, while that's important, it's more like collaboration, trying to get the team to engage more so than a leader to an employee. And I guess the other 2 points I'd make as we're coming on time pretty quickly here is having a clear framework from these are kind of points from a leader perspective, in building like teams that are have employees that are happy, healthy, and successful, driving success, right? Like, this ecosystem is not just delivery, it's people, it's different backgrounds, it's a whole lot of things that need to be like worked on to create, right? Like the quality outcomes that we would want. And that's understanding how people are growing, right? So what is like 9-boxing is one of those terms. I don't know if you guys have used it before, where, hey, as somebody comes in, they're in a quadrant and the expectation is that they are going to need a lot of assistance. They're going to need a lot of training. They're going to need a lot of like hands-on development that's going to take away from senior leaders of the team. But what is the expectation of like where they move? What should they know? Like, how are the growth patterns? And what's really interesting is when you do that in the framework of like seeing how people come in and acclimate to the team, like I think that's one of the most interesting things as a leader and a manager, is you get a perspective that individual contributors don't, which is there are there are vast differences between the types of team members. Some pick up in like a week and they're contributing by week 2. Others, it takes 2 months, right? And then they can deliver. Is there a better or worse? Like, well, obviously, if somebody can ramp up better, like that's fantastic. But like
Mhm.
you're measuring people with like the skills and things that they need to deliver in a framework that gives you opportunities to push for areas of growth and opportunity, right?
Mhm.
And then it's only when you're pushing and they keep consistently hitting roadblocks or challenges that they can't surpass that keeps them in a particular box, right? Or keeps them in a particular area that, hey, are they a valuable contributor? Maybe, right? Are they consistent or are they inconsistent? And you need to like work on, you know, them not being part of the team because it's not, and I think that is something that
Mm.
people are afraid to do is sometimes there are not good fits. And when you don't do something about those not good fits, it 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 creates an atmosphere where others in the team know that they're far beyond, they're performing and their team members not, and because they're not, they're having to do more work.
Mm.
And that creates, I think, opportunities for teams to not start to not gel as closely, and will affect the success of that team long term. The last point I want to make,
Mm. Good point.
um, I think having that framework also, as we were talking about risk and failure, one of the scariest but most rewarding is when you're pushing individuals into higher levels. You're assuming more risk as a leader because you would be putting them in positions that they could fail, right? So if you're trying to take the training wheels off of people, from especially as you go, we talked about like the senior, like how do I elevate somebody to senior, right? You're taking out here's exactly what I want you to do, right?
Mm.
Here's the task, here's the step by step, go do this thing. And you're opening up more responsibility for those individuals, and with greater responsibility, right, comes better, better things for the individual, better things for the team. But a whole number of things can go wrong, right, in those opportunities that you're providing or trying to push somebody, to grow, because the risk reward is greater, because usually you're elevating and putting more trust in somebody that they're going to accomplish what you need them to, without the training wheels, right?
Yeah.
And I
Mm.
think those are some of the most challenging, but also some of the most rewarding within a team that individuals can engage with.
So I think we're about the time where we're going to hit some final thoughts here. So I'm going to wrap a final thought here around this one and just say an effective team is invaluable for success. It's going to be part of what you need to do. I think a lot of what you do in this BI space is we build successful teams, make sure we have the skills that we want on the team. I think it is. If an effective team is there, how you get an effective team, I think there's a lot of education out there. Reading, people have studied this. People work in businesses, and I feel like we are in a very exciting world where the technology is shifting quickly. Part of the effective process is having clear expectations. Seems like that's been a very clear topic from this conversation. Working on being transparent with your team, what the goals are, and aligning those to basically corporate objectives. So I think there's some really good takeaways for me in this one that has been around really defining what success looks like, having good personal conversations with the team members, and making sure we have the right skills in the team. So really good topic today. Fun, interesting topic. Not so much about like features or specifically things, but I really appreciate uh, the I guess it's the wandering conversation that kind of went away from the super technology and more about the people and the process side of things. This was really good, super useful thoughts. Tom, any final thoughts?
No, I think you guys put the nail on the head. So we're going to get our cliches down.
Sure.
Like I said, I love these conversations because we could talk about technology all day, but my goodness, you cannot get away with some of these human skills and the human condition,
Yeah.
how essential that is what we do. So
Awesome. Well, with that, we just really say we appreciate your time. We know your day is valuable. Your ears are being, pulled many different ways between music and other things you want to learn or leverage. So we hope that your exercise, your run, whatever you're doing right now, to complete out this boring hour of time doing hopefully something productive. I hope we've been able to tickle your ears about some interesting conversation around the people, the process, and the teams that you work on. Thank you very much for chat, jumping in today. I really appreciate the comments that were there. Very neat, thoughtful comments as well. So I really appreciate you, chat, jumping in and giving out book recommendations and other thoughts around this topic. Really, really appreciate that as well. With that, if you like this conversation, if you like what you hear here, please share with somebody else. We really appreciate that. And we thank you very much for all your viewership and helping move the podcast forward. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI.Tips social media channels.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.